They mistook silence for weakness. When Jaden Taylor arrived at Ridgewood High, he carried two things: his father's deadly martial arts legacy and his mother's desperate warning to keep it hidden. For 17 years, they'd outrun the shadows of underground fighting rings where his father had died. Then came the ambush, 5 against 1. As Ryan Walker's crew surrounded him in that empty parking lot, they saw only a quiet new kid who refused to fight back. They never asked why. Now, as his perfect defense evolves into calculated offense, the truth emerges from behind his calm eyes. Jaden's restraint wasn't cowardice, it was mercy. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. Autumn leaves swirled across the empty street as Monica Taylor's sedan pulled into the driveway of their new home. 17-year-old Jaden watched from the passenger seat as curtains twitched in neighboring windows. Their arrival wasn't going unnoticed in this quiet suburban neighborhood of Ridgewood. "This is it," Monica said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Our fresh start." Jaden nodded but remained silent. He'd seen that forced smile before, the one his mother wore when she was trying to convince herself more than him. The pristine rows of identical houses with their manicured lawns felt suffocating already. He counted 3 neighbors who had stopped what they were doing to stare at them. "They're just curious about the new neighbors," Monica said, following his gaze. "It'll be fine. This is what we needed." But Jaden sensed her unease as they began unloading boxes from the car. Every few minutes she'd glance up and down the street, as if expecting someone to appear. When her phone rang an hour later, she nearly dropped the box she was carrying. Monica checked the screen. Blocked number. Her voice wavered slightly before she answered. "Hello?" Jaden couldn't hear the voice on the other end, but he saw his mother's face drain of color. She ended the call quickly, her hands trembling as she slipped the phone back into her pocket. "Who was that?" Jaden asked. "Wrong number," she replied too quickly. Later that evening, Jaden noticed her checking that all the doors and windows were locked, twice. The next morning, Jaden stood at the entrance of Ridgewood High, adjusting the straps of his backpack. The school was larger than his previous one, with an imposing brick facade that looked more like a fortress than a place of learning. "You've got this," he whispered to himself before pushing through the heavy double doors. Inside, the hallways were bustling with students. Jaden immediately felt the weight of dozens of eyes on him. Conversation stopped mid-sentence as he passed. Whispers followed in his wake. "New kid alert," someone murmured. "Where's he from?" asked another. Jaden kept his eyes forward, pretending not to notice. The student body was predominantly white, something he'd expected from researching the town, but the intensity of attention still caught him off guard. He located his locker and was inputting the combination when he felt a presence beside him. A stocky senior with a crew cut leaned against the neighboring locker, arms crossed. "New kid thinks he's special?" the boy said, loud enough for others to hear. Jaden glanced at him briefly before returning to his locker. "Just trying to find my way around? I'm Ryan Walker," the boy said with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "And this," he gestured to a much larger student approaching them, "is Chase Miller." Chase stood at least 6'3", built like a football lineman. His expression was blank as he sized Jaden up. "Nice to meet you," Jaden said neutrally, closing his locker. "I should get to class." As he turned to leave, Chase deliberately stepped into his path, bumping shoulders hard. "Watch where you're going," Chase growled. Jaden stepped back, refusing to be provoked. "My bad," he said, though they both knew it wasn't. Ryan chuckled. "First day and already causing problems." He looked Jaden up and down. "Those shoes from a thrift store? And what's with that backpack? Did you bring it from your old school in what, the projects?" A few onlookers snickered. Jaden felt heat rising in his neck but kept his face impassive. He'd dealt with guys like this before. "Got somewhere to be," Jaden said, sidestepping them both. "This isn't over, new kid," Ryan called after him. By lunchtime, Jaden had endured 4 classes of side glances and whispers. He entered the cafeteria, tray in hand, scanning for an empty table. Most were already filled, students clustered in tight-knit groups. He spotted an available seat at a half-empty table and made his way over. As he set his tray down, a girl with auburn hair looked up from her book. "Is it okay if I sit here?" Jaden asked. She studied him for a moment. "Free country." Her tone wasn't unfriendly, just cautious. "I'm Jaden." "Emily," she replied. "Emily Dawson. You're the new kid everyone's talking about." "Great," Jaden muttered. Already famous. A hint of a smile crossed her face. "Don't worry. They'll find something new to obsess over by next week." Across the cafeteria, Ryan and Chase entered with their group, scanning the room like predators. When Ryan spotted Jaden, he nudged Chase and they headed straight for his table. "Making friends already?" Ryan asked, placing both hands on the table and leaning forward. "Careful, Emily. You don't want to associate with the wrong crowd." Emily rolled her eyes. "Then why are you still standing here, Ryan?" Ryan's jaw tightened. "Nobody asked for your opinion." "Nobody asked for yours either," she shot back. Chase moved closer to Jaden. "You picked the wrong table, new kid." "The table seems fine to me," Jaden replied evenly. Chase reached for Jaden's milk carton. "Oops," he said, tipping it over. In that moment, something strange happened. Jaden's hand moved with startling speed, catching the carton before more than a few drops spilled. The movement was so smooth, so effortless, that even Chase looked surprised. Emily stared at Jaden with newfound interest. Ryan's eyes narrowed. "Lucky catch." Annoyed at being thwarted, Chase deliberately stuck his foot out as Jaden got up to grab napkins. But again, Jaden sidestepped the obstacle without even looking down, causing Chase to stumble slightly. "How did you—" Chase began. "Probably just luck again," Jaden said with a shrug. But his eyes held Chase's gaze steadily. "Let's go," Ryan muttered to Chase. "We've got better things to do." As they walked away, Emily leaned forward. "Nobody stands up to them like that." "I didn't do anything," Jaden said. "Exactly," she replied. "And that's what got to them." From across the cafeteria, a lanky boy with glasses had been watching the exchange with fascination. He approached their table nervously. "That was awesome," he said to Jaden. "I'm Ethan Reynolds." "Jaden Taylor." "Are you into martial arts?" Ethan asked eagerly. "The way you moved just now was like something out of a Bruce Lee movie." Jaden shifted uncomfortably. "Just good reflexes." "Ethan's obsessed with martial arts movies," Emily explained. "Thinks he's going to be the next UFC champion." Ethan blushed. "I just appreciate the discipline." The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch period. As they gathered their things, Emily warned Jaden. "Be careful with Ryan and Chase. They don't let things go easily." Emily's warning proved prophetic. When school ended, Jaden found Ryan and his group waiting in the parking lot near his bus. "Stop, thought you could embarrass us?" Ryan asked, his voice low and dangerous. They had positioned themselves in a loose circle around Jaden. "Not looking for trouble," Jaden said, keeping his breathing steady. He was acutely aware of all 5 of them, their positions, their stances. Chase moved in closer. "Too bad. Trouble found you." "Back off," came a voice from behind them. Emily pushed through the circle, standing beside Jaden. 5 against 1? Real brave. Ryan's face contorted with anger. "Stay out of this, Emily. This isn't your fight." "It's not a fight at all," she retorted. "It's harassment. And if you don't, back off, I'm going straight to Principal Bennett." "You think I'm scared of the principal?" Ryan scoffed, but he took a step back. "You should be more scared of your daddy finding out you got suspended again," Emily replied coldly. Ryan's eyes darkened. "You'll regret getting involved." He looked at Jaden. "Both of you will." With a jerk of his head, he signaled to the others, and they dispersed. "Thanks," Jaden said as they walked toward the bus stop. "Don't thank me yet," Emily replied grimly. "You've just made it onto Ryan Walker's hit list, and his dad's on the school board." That night, Jaden sat at his bedroom window, unable to sleep. The house was quiet except for the occasional creaking of settling wood. Something felt off. A prickling sensation at the back of his neck made him scan the darkness outside. There, a shadow moving between the trees across the street. Jaden slipped downstairs and out the front door, his footsteps silent on the porch. "Hello?" he called softly. The shadow froze, then retreated hastily. Footsteps echoed on pavement, growing fainter. Jaden considered following, but thought better of it. Maybe it was just paranoia, the stress of a new school and new bullies. Back in his room, he emptied his backpack to organize his school supplies. A yellowed envelope slipped out from between his notebooks, something he hadn't put there. Inside was a faded photograph of a man in a fighting cage, bloodied but standing victorious, arms raised. The man's face was unmistakable. It was his father, younger but with the same intense eyes Jaden saw in the mirror every day. He turned the photo over. An address was scribbled on the back in handwriting he didn't recognize. Down the street, in a parked sedan with tinted windows, a man lowered a pair of binoculars and picked up his phone. "He's here," the man said into the receiver. "And he's just like his father." The rest of the week passed in a tense calm. Jaden kept to himself, ate lunch with Emily and occasionally Ethan, and avoided Ryan's group when possible. By Friday, Ethan had worked up the courage to invite Jaden to check out the school gym after classes. "They've got decent equipment," Ethan explained as they walked through the double doors into the expansive space. "Not many people use it after school." The gym was mostly empty, with only a few seniors using the weight machines. Jaden spotted a lone punching bag hanging in the corner and gravitated toward it. "You box?" Ethan asked, following him. "A little," Jaden admitted, testing the bag with a light jab. It felt good, familiar. He hadn't realized how much tension he'd been carrying until he felt it draining from his shoulders as he settled into a rhythm. He was so focused that he didn't notice Ryan and Chase entering the gym until they were only a few feet away. Well, Ryan said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "The new kid thinks he's a fighter." Jaden stepped back from the bag, but kept his hands up, instinctively moving into a guarded stance. "Just getting some exercise," he said. Chase moved forward, his massive frame blocking the exit path. "Let's see what you've got." Without warning, Chase threw a heavy punch aimed at Jaden's face. What happened next stunned everyone watching. Jaden's head tilted just slightly, the punch missing by centimeters. In the same fluid motion, he pivoted away, creating distance between them. Chase looked bewildered. He hadn't expected to miss and certainly hadn't expected Jaden to move with such precision. "What the hell was that?" Ryan demanded. "Lucky dodge," Jaden said. But his eyes told a different story. There had been no panic, no fear, just calculated movement. "That wasn't luck," came a gruff voice from the doorway. An older man with gray hair and a weathered face stepped forward. His navy tracksuit bore the school logo and Coach Harris embroidered on the chest. "You've had training," Coach Harris said to Jaden. "Real training." It wasn't a question. Jaden said nothing, but the coach's penetrating gaze seemed to see straight through him. "Everyone hit the showers," Coach Harris ordered the lingering students. As they filtered out, he approached Jaden. "Be careful who sees what you can do," he said quietly. "This isn't the place for it." "I don't know what you're talking about," Jaden replied. Coach Harris's eyes narrowed. "Yes, you do. And trust me, you don't want the wrong people knowing." With that cryptic warning, he walked away, leaving Jaden and Ethan alone. "That was insane," Ethan whispered, his eyes wide with admiration. "Where did you learn to move like that?" "It's nothing," Jaden insisted, but Ethan wasn't buying it. "That was not nothing. That was something I've only seen in professional fighters." Jaden grabbed his bag. "I should get home." The following day, at lunch, Emily seemed unusually quiet. When Jaden asked if something was wrong, she hesitated before answering. "I saw what happened in the gym yesterday," she finally said. "Word travels fast around here." "It wasn't anything." "Stop saying that," she interrupted. "I know what I saw. Chase has been boxing since middle school and you made him look like an amateur." Jaden sighed. "Can we drop it?" "Fine," Emily relented. After a pause, she added, Want to know why I'm always at odds with Ryan? The abrupt change of subject caught Jaden off guard. Why? My brother Jacob was a junior here last year, she explained. Ryan and his friends bullied him relentlessly, worse than what they're doing to you. They cornered him in the locker room one day and... She trailed off, her eyes hardening. Jacob ended up with 3 broken ribs and a concussion. Did they get expelled? Jaden asked. Emily laughed bitterly. Ryan's father made it all go away, claimed it was just boys being boys and that Jacob provoked them. The school board backed him up. Jacob transferred to a private school afterward. He couldn't bear coming back here. That's why you stood up for me in the parking lot. She nodded. I didn't stand up for Jacob when I should have. I'm not making that mistake again. She looked directly at Jaden. But I don't believe in fighting back their way. Violence just creates more violence. Jaden understood her perspective, but something inside him knew that sometimes you didn't have a choice. By the end of the day, Ryan had initiated his next move. Whispers followed Jaden through the hallways. Apparently, he had been bragging about being the toughest kid in school, challenging anyone who dared to test him. That's not true, Jaden insisted when Ethan told him about the rumors. I know, Ethan replied. But that's not what everyone else thinks. Ryan's setting you up. The setup became clear the following week when Jaden was called to the principal's office during his mathematics class. Principal Thompson, a stern woman, with tightly pulled back hair, gestured for him to sit. Mr. Taylor, we have a serious issue to discuss. She slid a paper across the desk. This is your trigonometry exam from yesterday. Jaden looked at the paper. It had an A+ marked at the top. I don't understand the problem, he said. The problem, Mr. Taylor, is that your answers match exactly, word for word, calculation for calculation, with Melissa Wright's paper. Even the same errors. Jaden felt his stomach drop. That's impossible. I've never even spoken to Melissa. Nevertheless, the evidence is clear. You've been suspended for 1 week for academic dishonesty. But I didn't cheat. Principal Thompson's expression remained unmoved. The decision has been made. Monica was furious when she arrived at the school, her eyes blazing as she stormed into the principal's office with Jaden. My son does not cheat, she insisted. Have you even considered that someone might be setting him up? Principal Thompson sighed. Mrs. Taylor, I understand you want to believe the best about your son. This isn't about belief, Monica cut in. Jaden has a 3.8 GPA from his previous school. He doesn't need to cheat. The evidence can be fabricated, Monica finished, and I want to know why you're so quick to assume my son's guilt without a proper investigation. The meeting ended at an impasse. As they left the office, Jaden noticed Ryan watching from across the hallway, a satisfied smirk on his face. Beside him stood a man in an expensive suit, similar features, same confident posture. Ryan's father. That's not going to help your case, the man was saying to Ryan, but there was no real reprimand in his tone. He glanced at Jaden and Monica, his expression cold and dismissive. The suspension couldn't be overturned. That night, Monica and Jaden sat at their kitchen table in silence, the weight of the day's events hanging between them. This isn't right, Monica finally said. I should fight this. It won't change anything, Jaden replied. Ryan's father has too much influence. Monica reached across the table and took his hand. There's something I need to tell you, Jaden. Something I should have told you a long time ago. The seriousness in her voice made Jaden sit up straighter. It's about your father, she continued. You know he was a fighter before he died. What you don't know is that he was forced into underground fights. Her voice cracked slightly. Those fights. They got people killed, Jaden. Your father didn't die in a car accident like I told you. He was murdered. The revelation hit Jaden like a physical blow. Murdered? By who? Powerful people. People who run those underground fights. Monica's eyes glistened with unshed tears. That's why we've moved so much. I've been trying to keep you away from that world. Is that why we came here? To hide? Monica nodded. But they've found us again. Those phone calls I've been getting, they're not wrong numbers. Someone knows we're here. She squeezed his hand tighter. Promise me you won't go down the same path. Promise me you won't fight no matter what. Jaden thought of Ryan, of Coach Harris's warning, of the mysterious address on the back of his father's photo. I promise, he said, but the words felt hollow. The suspension gave Ryan's group the perfect opportunity. On the third night, Jaden was walking home from the corner store when he noticed a car following him. It pulled alongside him as he turned into the school parking lot, a shortcut he often took. The car doors opened and 5 figures emerged. Ryan, Chase, and 3 others Jaden recognized from their group. Heard you got suspended, Ryan said, circling around him. Turns out you're not so special after all. Jaden kept walking, ignoring them. Hey, Ryan called, his voice hardening. I'm talking to you. Jaden stopped but didn't turn around. I'm not looking for trouble, Ryan. Too late for that. Ryan nodded to the others, and they formed a tight circle around Jaden. Either fight, or we'll break you. Jaden assessed his situation quickly. 5 against 1, no witnesses, an isolated parking lot. He could feel his heart rate remaining steady, his breathing controlled. Years of training had prepared him for moments like this. Chase made the first move, lunging forward with a wild punch. Jaden simply wasn't there when the fist arrived, having shifted slightly to the right. Another of Ryan's friends attacked from behind, but Jaden ducked smoothly, causing the boy to stumble forward. One by one, they attempted to land blows, but Jaden moved like water, flowing around their attacks without ever striking back. It was as if he could anticipate their movements before they even made them. Fight back, Ryan screamed in frustration. Stop dodging and fight. I don't want to fight you, Jaden replied calmly. Coward, Chase growled, charging forward like a bull. Just as the situation was escalating to its breaking point, headlights flooded the parking lot. A car horn blared, and the boys scattered, all except Jaden and Ryan. Coach Harris stepped out of the car. What's going on here? He demanded, though his tone suggested he already knew. Nothing, Ryan muttered, backing away. Just talking. Coach Harris watched him retreat before turning to Jaden. You're playing a dangerous game, kid. I didn't start this, Jaden protested. Doesn't matter who started it. What matters is how it ends. The coach's expression was grim. Get in the car. I'll drive you home. The ride was silent until they pulled up to Jaden's house. Before Jaden could get out, Coach Harris placed a hand on his arm. Listen to me carefully, he said, his voice low. I've seen fighters like you before. You've got something special, something rare. But that gift can be a curse if the wrong people notice it. He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. This town has secrets, son. Dark ones. And you're stirring them up. Jaden thought about the address on the back of the photograph. Do you know where Brighton Street is? Coach Harris stiffened. Why? Just curious. Stay away from Brighton Street, the coach warned. Nothing good happens there. That night, Monica received another call. This time, Jaden was close enough to hear the voice on the other end. You can't hide him forever, the deep voice said. He belongs in the ring, just like his father. After she hung up, Monica's hands were shaking so badly she dropped the phone. We need to leave, she whispered. We need to go now. But Jaden had made his decision. The next morning, while his mother was at work, he followed the address on the photograph to Brighton Street. It led him to what looked like an abandoned warehouse with a faded sign reading Kelly's Auto Parts. Jaden hesitated at the entrance before pushing open the heavy door. Inside was not an auto shop, but a fully equipped fighting gym. Heavy bags hung from chains, a boxing ring dominated the center, and various equipment lined the walls. Men of different ages were training, their movements precise and powerful. An older man with a scarred face looked up from wrapping a fighter's hands. His eyes widened in recognition. Well, I'll be damned, he said, approaching Jaden slowly. You're Carter's kid. I thought you were dead. You knew my father? Jaden asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The man nodded. Knew him? I trained him. He extended a calloused hand. Name's Kelly, Mike Kelly, and you're the spitting image of him. Jaden shook the offered hand. I'm Jaden. I know who you are, Kelly replied. Question is, do you? Mike Kelly's underground gym became Jaden's sanctuary over the next few days. While serving his suspension, he'd slip out when Monica was at work, making the 20-minute trek to Brighton Street. Each time, he told himself he was just going to learn more about his father, not to train. But the familiar smell of sweat and leather, the rhythmic sounds of fists striking bags, it all felt like coming home. Your old man was something special, Kelly told him on his third visit, as they watched two fighters sparring in the ring. Had this way of seeing attacks before they happened, like he could read minds. That's what got him into trouble? Jaden asked. Kelly's weathered face darkened. Talent like that attracts attention, the wrong kind. He glanced at Jaden. You move just like him, you know that? Jaden didn't respond. The parallels to his father both thrilled and terrified him. He ever mention a man named Victor Kane to you? Kelly asked carefully. No, who is he? Kelly seemed about to answer when his phone rang. He checked the screen and his expression changed. We'll talk about that another time. You should head home. As Jaden left the gym, he couldn't shake the feeling that Kelly was hiding something important from him. Back at Ridgewood High, Ryan Walker was brewing his next move. Jaden's suspension was ending, and the rumors about his fighting abilities had only grown during his absence. We need to settle this once and for all, Ryan told Chase in their group during lunch period. A public fight behind the school. Everyone will be watching. What if he doesn't show? One of them asked. Ryan's smile was cold. He will. Because if he doesn't, everyone will know he's a fraud. By the end of the day, the word had spread through the entire school. The showdown was set for Friday afternoon, and everyone was talking about it. Emily cornered Jaden at his locker his first day back. Tell me you're not going to that stupid fight. How did you even hear about it? Jaden asked. I just got back. Everyone's talking about it. Ryan's made sure of that. Her eyes were pleading. Don't go, Jaden. It's exactly what he wants. If I don't show up, it just confirms what he's saying about me. Who cares what Ryan Walker thinks? Emily threw her hands up in frustration. Fighting him won't solve anything. It'll just make things worse. Later, Ethan caught up with Jaden between classes, his excitement a stark contrast to Emily's concern. Dude, you have to go, he insisted. I've seen what you can do. You could totally take Ryan down. I promised my mom I wouldn't fight, Jaden said. Ethan looked disappointed. Sometimes you have to stand up for yourself, and maybe standing up to Ryan would help others who can't defend themselves. Jaden remained conflicted. Each path seemed to lead to more trouble. That afternoon, he returned to Kelly's gym, hoping for some clarity. But Kelly was deep in conversation with a man Jaden hadn't seen before. They stopped talking when they noticed him. Jaden, Kelly said, his tone more formal than usual. This is an old friend of mine, Jack Harris. Coach Harris? Jaden recognized him immediately. Harris nodded, curtly. We need to talk. They moved to Kelly's office, a small room cluttered with old fight posters and trophies. Harris closed the door behind them. What are you doing here, kid? Harris demanded. I told you to stay away from Brighton Street. I wanted to learn about my father, Jaden replied. Harris exchanged a glance with Kelly. Tell him, he said. Kelly sighed heavily. Your father fought for a man named Victor Kane, most promising fighter Kane ever had. When Carter tried to leave, to start a legitimate career, he trailed off. Kane didn't let him, Harris finished. Who is Victor Kane? Jaden asked again. The kind of man who owns people, Harris said grimly. He runs underground fights all over the state, high stakes, no rules, and he's got connections to people you wouldn't believe. Like Ryan's father, Jaden guessed. Harris's head snapped up. What do you know about that? Nothing. Just a hunch. Harris studied him. You're too smart for your own good, just like your old man. He leaned forward. Listen to me carefully. Stay away from this fight. Stay away from Ryan Walker. And most importantly, stay away from Victor Kane. I don't even know Victor Kane, Jaden protested. No, Harris agreed. But he knows you. Jaden couldn't sleep. That night, Harris's warning echoing in his mind. Around 2 a.m., he heard the distinct sound of glass breaking downstairs. He crept to his bedroom door, listening carefully. Whispers. Multiple people. He dialed 911 on his phone and set it to speaker, hiding it under his bed before moving silently to his window. Outside, he could see dark figures slashing the tires of his mother's car. The side was already spray-painted with crude insults. Sirens wailed in the distance, and the vandals scattered. By the time the police arrived, they were long gone. But the damage was done. The house had been ransacked, furniture overturned, and belongings strewn across the floor. Monica surveyed the destruction with quiet rage. This isn't random, she said to the officer taking their statement. This is targeted. Harassment. The officer looked skeptical. Any idea who might have done this? Jaden knew exactly who was behind it. This was Ryan's way of ensuring he showed up for the fight. After the police left, Monica turned to Jaden. We're leaving this town. Tonight. Mom, we can't keep running, Jaden argued. It won't stop. What choice do we have? She asked, her voice breaking. They found us again. Jaden thought of his father, of Harris's warnings, of the fight waiting for him tomorrow. What if there's another way? By Friday afternoon, the area behind the school was packed with students. Word of the fight had spread beyond Ridgewood High, drawing teenagers from neighboring schools as well. Ryan stood in the center of the makeshift arena, his group flanking him like bodyguards. Emily pushed through the crowd, frantically searching for Jaden. She spotted Ethan and grabbed his arm. Is he coming? Ethan shrugged. I hope so. This is insane, Emily said. Someone's going to get hurt. That's the point, came Ryan's voice from behind them. Unless your boyfriend's too scared to show. Emily spun around. He's not my boyfriend, and this whole thing is pathetic. What's pathetic is how he's been pretending to be something he's not, Ryan sneered. Time to expose the fraud. The crowd parted suddenly, and Jaden walked forward. A hush fell over the gathered students. He looked calm, focused, as if he'd made peace with whatever was about to happen. You came, Ryan said, genuine surprise in his voice. Let's get this over with, Jaden replied. Ryan gestured to Chase and two other boys, who spread out to form a wider circle. One small change of plans. You don't just fight me, you fight all of us. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Even some of Ryan's supporters looked uncomfortable with the odds. That wasn't the deal, Jaden said. Ryan smiled. I don't make deals with frauds. In the shadows at the edge of the gathering, Coach Harris watched silently. His expression was grim, but he made no move to intervene. Last chance to walk away, Ryan taunted. Jaden glanced at Emily, who was shaking her head desperately. He looked at Ethan, whose expression was a mix of excitement and fear. Then he turned back to Ryan. I'm not walking away. Chase made the first move, charging forward like a bull. But Jaden was no longer there when the punch arrived. He sidestepped with fluid grace, causing Chase to stumble past him. The second attacker came from the right. Jaden pivoted, using the boy's momentum against him, sending him sprawling to the ground. The crowd gasped collectively. No one had seen Jaden throw a single punch, yet two attackers were already down. Ryan's face contorted with rage. Get him! He screamed at the third boy, who hesitated before lunging forward. What happened next stunned everyone watching. Jaden moved like smoke, impossible to grasp. Each attack was met with precise defensive movements that left his opponents off balance and confused. It was as if he could predict their actions before they made them. When the third attacker was down, Jaden turned to Ryan. Your turn. For the first time, fear crossed Ryan's face. He glanced around for support, but his crew was scattered on the ground, groaning. I'm not fighting you, Ryan said, backing up. Isn't that why we're here? Jaden asked, taking a step forward. The crowd was dead silent now, witnessing something they'd never seen before. Ryan Walker, afraid. "This isn't over," Ryan spat, turning to leave. As the crowd began to disperse, someone called out, "Look, he recorded it all." Ethan stood frozen, his phone still raised, having captured the entire fight. Before anyone could stop him, he hit upload on the school's social media group. By evening, the video had been shared hundreds of times. Jaden Taylor was no longer just the new kid. He was a legend. Jaden's phone buzzed as he was walking home. Unknown number. A text message. "You fight just like him. Let's see if you can survive like him." He stared at the screen, a chill creeping up his spine. When he looked up, he noticed a black car parked at the end of his street. A figure sat inside, watching. The car started and drove toward him slowly. When it passed, the driver's window rolled down just enough for Jaden to catch a glimpse of the man inside. Well-dressed, with cold eyes that seemed to look right through him. The man made a phone call as he drove away. "It's time," was all he said. The video of Jaden's fight spread like wildfire beyond the school, reaching corners of the internet where people took notice for very different reasons. At Ridgewood High, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Students who had ignored Jaden now greeted him in the hallways. Others gave him a wide berth, eyes lowered as he passed. Only Emily seemed genuinely concerned. "This isn't good, Jaden," she warned as they sat in the library during lunch period. "That video has over 20,000 views." "I didn't ask for the attention," Jaden said. "It doesn't matter. You've got it now." She lowered her voice. "Ryan's father called an emergency school board meeting yesterday. I heard they're talking about expelling you." Jaden wasn't surprised. He'd been waiting for the other shoe to drop. Since the fight. Sure enough, by fourth period, he was summoned to Principal Thompson's office. This time, she wasn't alone. A severe-looking woman in a tailored suit sat beside her desk, the district superintendent. "Mr. Taylor, this is a very serious situation," Principal Thompson began. "The video circulating online shows you engaged in violent behavior on school grounds." "I was defending myself," Jaden protested. "That's not how it appears," the superintendent cut in. "From what I see, you deliberately humiliated several students using what can only be described as advanced combat training. They ambushed me, 4 against 1. Regardless, we have a zero-tolerance policy for fighting," Principal Thompson said. "You're suspended indefinitely pending a full review by the school board." As Jaden left the office, he saw Monica being escorted in, her face tight with worry. In the hallway outside, Ryan stood with his father, a tall man with graying temples and the same cold, entitled expression as his son. Mr. Walker's eyes followed Jaden as he passed, calculating and dangerous. That afternoon, a black SUV pulled up beside Jaden as he walked home. The back door opened. "Get in," said a voice from inside. "We need to talk." Jaden peered into the darkened interior. The well-dressed man from the car the other night sat in the back seat. "Who are you?" Jaden asked, keeping his distance. "Victor Kane," the man replied. "I'm sure you've heard of me by now." Jaden's blood ran cold. "I'm not interested in talking." "I'm not giving you a choice," Kane said smoothly. "Get in, or the next conversation I have will be with your mother instead." Reluctantly, Jaden slid into the seat. The door closed behind him, and the SUV pulled away from the curb. "I see you have your father's gift," Kane said, studying Jaden with clinical interest. "Natural talent like that is rare, 1 in a million." "What do you want from me?" Kane smiled thinly. "The same thing I wanted from your father, to put your talents to proper use." "You mean illegal underground fights," Jaden said. "I prefer to think of it as an exclusive sporting venture for discerning clients with particular tastes." Kane's voice was silky, educated. "Your father made a lot of money fighting for me. He could have had everything. Until he wanted out," Jaden said. Kane's expression hardened briefly before returning to its practiced smoothness. "Your father made unfortunate choices. I'm offering you a different path. I'm not interested. You will be, Kane replied confidently. Everyone has their breaking point, Jaden. It's just a matter of finding yours. The SUV pulled over. They had circled the block and were back where they'd started. Think about my offer, Kane said as Jaden got out. I'll be in touch. The next day, a ripple of shock went through the school. Coach Harris was gone. A substitute teacher showed up for his classes, explaining that he had taken an extended leave of absence. Jaden immediately went to Kelly's gym after school, but the place was locked up tight. A for lease sign hung in the window. No trace of Kelly or the fighters who had trained there. Panicked, Jaden called Emily. Something's wrong. Kelly's gym is closed and Coach Harris is missing. Meet me at Franklin Park in 20 minutes, she said, sounding equally concerned. There's something I need to show you. When Jaden arrived at the park, Emily was already waiting, a folder clutched in her hands. I've been doing some digging, she said without preamble. About Victor Kane, and Ryan's father. How do you know about Kane? Jaden asked. I heard my parents talking about him. My dad's a civil attorney. He mentioned Kane was untouchable because of his connections. She opened the folder. Look at this. Inside was a newspaper clipping showing a younger Thomas Walker, Ryan's father, shaking hands with Victor Kane at a charity event. The caption identified Walker as a major donor to Kane's youth boxing initiative. It's a front, Emily explained. The charity doesn't exist except on paper. It's how they launder money from the fights. How did you find this? My brother didn't just transfer schools because of bullying, Emily admitted. He saw something he wasn't supposed to. Ryan once brought him to one of these underground fights. When Jacob threatened to tell someone, that's when the serious bullying started. Jaden thought about the black SUV, about Kane's warning. This is bigger than high school bullies. Much bigger, Emily agreed. And now they're targeting you because of what you can do, because of who your father was. As they talked, Jaden noticed people staring at them across the park. Groups of students were pointing and whispering. One girl turned away when Jaden looked in her direction. What's going on? He asked. Emily grimaced. Ryan's latest move. He's spreading rumors that you're dangerous, that you were kicked out of your last school for nearly killing someone in a fight. That's ridiculous. It doesn't matter. People believe it because they saw what you can do in that video. Emily looked down. My parents said I shouldn't be seen with you anymore, that it could hurt my college applications to be associated with someone who's been suspended for violence. Jaden felt a cold knot form in his stomach. So you're here to tell me we can't be friends anymore? No, Emily said firmly. I'm here because I believe in doing what's right. But, she hesitated. I might need to keep my distance at school for a while, just until this blows over. The isolation Jaden felt in that moment was complete. His only allies were either missing or being forced away from him. When Jaden got home, he found Monica sitting at the kitchen table, her face ashen. A letter lay in front of her. I lost my job, she said without looking up. Budget cuts, they said, but the only position eliminated was mine. Jaden sat beside her. This is because of me, isn't it? Monica didn't answer directly. I got another call today. From him. Victor Kane, Jaden guessed. Monica's head snapped up. How do you know that name? He approached me yesterday. Offered me fights. Oh my God, Monica whispered, covering her. Mother, Jaden, you have to stay away from him. He's dangerous. I know that, Mom. But running isn't working anymore. Monica stood abruptly and went to the living room. Jaden followed, watching as she pulled out a small box from behind a loose baseboard. There's something you need to know, she said, opening the box. Inside was a worn envelope. I've been keeping this from you. She handed him the envelope. Inside was a newspaper clipping dated 8 years earlier. The headline read, Local fighter found dead in apparent hit and run. His father's photo accompanied the article. The police ruled it an accident, Monica said, her voice hollow. But it happened the day after he told Kane he was leaving. taking us and starting over somewhere else. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was afraid, she admitted. Afraid you'd want revenge. Afraid you'd end up just like him. A knock at the door interrupted them. Monica froze, then moved cautiously to peer through the peephole. She gasped and opened the door. Victor Kane stood on their porch, immaculately dressed. Monica, he said warmly, as if greeting an old friend. It's been too long. Get out, she hissed. You have no right to be here. Kane ignored her, his gaze falling on Jayden. I see you've been catching up on family history. You killed my father, Jayden said, his voice deadly calm. A tragic accident, Kane replied smoothly. Just like the ones that seem to follow your family. He glanced meaningfully around their home. It would be a shame if another accident happened, especially to your mother. Monica stepped between them. Leave my son out of this, Victor, please. You owe me, Monica, Kane said, his pleasant demeanor cracking slightly. You and Carter took something that belonged to me, and now it's time to pay up. What is he talking about? Jayden asked his mother. Kane smiled coldly. She never told you, did she? About the money your father stole from me before he died? About the deals she made to keep you both alive? Monica's face drained of color. Victor, don't. Fight for me, Kane said to Jayden, or everything your mother built, this house, your safety, her reputation, it all goes away. After Kane left, the house felt colder somehow. Monica sank into a chair, looking smaller than Jayden had ever seen her. Is it true? He asked. Did Dad steal from him? Your father took back what was rightfully his, Monica answered quietly. The money he earned in those fights. Kane had been skimming from him for years. She looked up at Jayden, her eyes pleading. We needed it to get away, to start over. The next morning, Jayden woke to the sound of his mother screaming. He rushed downstairs to find her standing in the living room, which had been completely destroyed. Furniture was slashed open, electronics smashed, and every framed photo shattered. On the wall, painted in what looked sickeningly like blood, was a message. Fight or lose everything. Jayden stared at the words, something hardening inside him. He pulled out his phone and dialed the number from the text message. I'll do it, he said when Kane answered. I'll fight for you. Excellent, Kane replied. I knew you'd see reason eventually. But I'm doing this my way, Jayden continued. One fight. That clears my family's debt. After that, we're done. Kane chuckled. We'll see about that. Be at the address I'm texting you. Tonight. 8 o'clock. As Jayden hung up, Monica looked at him with tears in her eyes. What have you done? What I had to, Jayden replied. But don't worry. I have a plan. The warehouse loomed before Jayden like a concrete monolith, its windows blacked out and exterior unmarked. Only the steady stream of expensive cars pulling into the adjacent lot indicated this abandoned-looking building was their destination. Monica sat beside him in their car, her knuckles white as she gripped the steering wheel. You don't have to do this, she whispered, her voice breaking. We can still leave, start over somewhere else. Jayden shook his head. They'll just find us again. He checked his phone, 7:45 p.m. I need you to trust me, Mom. I have a plan. What? Plan could possibly work against men like Victor Kane. Remember what Dad always said. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. Monica finished, a ghost of a smile crossing her face. You sound just like him. A black SUV pulled up beside them. The window rolled down to reveal Victor Kane's driver. He's waiting inside, the man said. Just the fighter. No spectators until showtime. Monica grabbed Jayden's arm. Promise me. You'll be careful. I promise, Jayden said, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze before stepping out of the car. The driver led him through a side entrance and down a dimly lit corridor. The sounds grew louder as they approached, a crowd chanting, music thumping, the unmistakable noise of combat. They emerged into a cavernous space transformed into a fighting arena. A chain-link cage stood at the center, surrounded by tiered seating filled with well-dressed spectators drinking from champagne flutes. Victor Kane waited near the fighter's entrance, impeccable in his tailored suit. "Right on time," he said, appraising Jaden coldly. "Follow me." He led Jaden to a small locker room where a man was wrapping another fighter's hands. The other fighter was enormous, at least 6'6" and built like a heavyweight boxer, with scarred knuckles and a broken nose that had healed crooked. "Jaden, meet Dominic," Kane said. "Your opponent tonight." Dominic barely glanced at Jaden, his expression blank and professional. "He's twice my size," Jaden said. Kane smiled thinly. "That's what makes it interesting for my clients. They don't pay to see fair fights." He gestured to a man who approached with hand wraps. "Get ready. You're on in 20 minutes. As the man wrapped his hands, Jaden scanned the room, memorizing exits, noting security positions. His heart rate remained steady despite the circumstances. Years of training had prepared him for moments like this, though never in a setting so brutal. "First time in the cage?" the man wrapping his hands asked quietly. Jaden nodded. "Word of advice: when you go down, stay down. Guys like Dominic don't stop until they're made to stop." "Thanks," Jaden replied, though he had no intention of staying down. A handler came to escort him to the cage. As Jaden walked the narrow path between spectators, he felt their eyes appraising him like meat at a market. These weren't ordinary fight fans. They were predators looking for blood. Their expressions ranged from amused to dismissive as they saw his size compared to Dominic's. In the front row, Jaden spotted a familiar face. Coach Harris, sporting a black eye and split lip. Their eyes met briefly. Harris gave an almost imperceptible nod as if to say, "Be ready." Victor Kane stepped into the center of the cage with a microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have a special treat, a legacy match." He gestured toward Jaden. "Some of you may remember Carter Taylor, one of our most promising fighters years ago. Tonight, his son makes his debut." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some of the older spectators leaned forward with renewed interest. "Opposing him," Kane continued, "a fighter with 15 wins, no losses. The demolisher, Dominic Reed." The crowd roared as Dominic entered the cage, rolling his massive shoulders. The referee, if the armed thug in the cage could be called that, explained. The rules quickly. No eye gouging, no groin strikes, everything else was fair game. Fight until one man couldn't continue. The bell rang, and Dominic charged immediately, looking to end the fight in seconds. Jaden slipped the attack with fluid movement, causing Dominic to crash into the cage wall. The big man turned, rage building in his eyes, and unleashed a barrage of heavy punches. Each one missed by millimeters as Jaden weaved, ducked, and pivoted. 2 minutes in, Dominic was already breathing heavily, frustration evident on his face. He'd yet to land a single clean blow. The crowd, initially enthusiastic, grew restless. "Fight back!" someone shouted. "This isn't a dancing competition," yelled another. Kane watched from ringside, his expression darkening. This wasn't the spectacle he'd promised his clients. Jaden maintained his defensive strategy, studying Dominic's patterns. The big man was powerful but predictable, telegraphing his moves with subtle tells, a slight shift of weight, a tightening around the eyes before a right hook. 5 minutes in, Dominic caught Jaden with a glancing blow that sent him reeling against the cage. The crowd leapt to their feet, sensing blood. Dominic pressed his advantage, trapping Jaden against the chain link and unleashing a knee to the midsection that drove the air from his lungs. For the first time, Jaden felt fear creeping in. This wasn't a high school bully. This was a trained killer who fought without rules or mercy. As Dominic drew back for a finishing blow, Jaden spotted something in the crowd beyond the cage. Ethan Reynolds, his eyes wide with horror, being escorted by 2 of Kane's men. What was Ethan doing here? Had he followed Jaden? The momentary distraction cost him. Dominic's fist connected with Jaden's jaw, sending him crashing to the mat. The crowd roared in approval. "Stay down," Kane's voice cut through the noise, low and threatening. "Or your friend over there joins the next fight." Jaden's vision blurred as he struggled to his knees. Through the haze, he saw Ethan being restrained, fear evident on his face. The referee began counting down. 8, 9. At the last possible moment, Jaden surged to his feet. The crowd's disappointment was audible. Dominic circled again, more cautious now. "Just die already, kid," he growled. "Not today," Jaden replied, settling back into his stance. The second round was more brutal than the first. Dominic, realizing he couldn't match Jaden's speed, resorted to dirty tactics, attempts to break fingers, headbutts and clinches, even spitting to distract. Jaden absorbed punishment but remained standing, his defensive skills keeping him from the worst damage. By the third round, both fighters were bloodied. Jaden from accumulated damage, Dominic from the few precise counterstrikes Jaden had landed when openings appeared. The crowd was fully engaged now, witnessing a fight unlike any they'd seen before. As Jaden circled away from another wild charge, his gaze swept the audience again. This time, he froze. There, sitting next to Victor Kane, were two faces he hadn't expected to see, Ryan Walker and his father. They were laughing, champagne glasses in hand, clearly enjoying the spectacle. The realization hit Jaden like another punch. This was never just about Victor Kane. Ryan's father had been part of it all along. The school suspension, Monica losing her job, the threats, a coordinated effort to force Jaden into this cage. Anger flared in Jaden's chest, a hot, dangerous thing he'd kept carefully contained until now. In that moment of clarity, Dominic rushed in. Instead of evading, Jaden stepped into the attack, timing a perfect counterhook that caught Dominic flush on the jaw. The big man staggered, surprised by the sudden offense. Jaden pressed forward, his movements no longer just defensive but precisely aggressive. Each strike targeted vulnerable points, the solar plexus, the floating ribs, the temple. Dominic, already tired from chasing shadows for 3 rounds, began to crumble. A precise elbow split his eyebrow, blood pouring into his eye. A liver shot doubled him over. A final spinning back kick sent him crashing to the mat, unconscious. Silence fell over the arena. Then, scattered applause that grew into a roar. The spectators were on their feet, not out of bloodlust now, but genuine appreciation for what they'd witnessed. Jaden stood in the center of the cage, chest heaving, hands still raised in a guard position. Kane entered the cage, his expression unreadable. "Impressive," he said, though his eyes were cold. "You've exceeded expectations." "We had a deal," Jaden said. "1 fight. That clears my family's debt." Kane smiled thinly. "The night's not over yet." He gestured to his men who were already entering the cage. "Take him to the back. Clean him up. We have special plans for our new champion." As they escorted Jaden out, he caught a final glimpse of Ryan and his father in deep conversation with Kane. Mr. Walker looked angry, gesturing emphatically while Kane listened with practiced patience. In the back room, a medic tended to Jaden's cuts while guards stood watch. Through the thin walls, he could hear Kane announcing the next match. Then, unexpectedly, a commotion, raised voices, the sound of something heavy falling. The door burst open. Coach Harris stood there, breathing heavily. "We need to move now." "What's happening?" Jaden asked as Harris cut the zip ties binding his wrists. "Kane's setting you up for a fall," Harris explained, checking the hallway. "Walker's been grooming his son for years to be Kane's new starfighter. You just stole his spotlight. Ryan, he's fighting for Kane? Not just fighting. He's the face of a new league they're planning. Legitimate sponsors, television deals, all built on underground credibility. But you're the real deal, and that threatens everything." Harris handed Jaden his phone. "Your friend Emily sent this. She's been digging." On the screen was a news article outlining Thomas Walker's new sports entertainment venture, with his son Ryan featured prominently as its breakout star. "They need you gone," Harris continued. "The next fight isn't a fight, it's an execution." "What about Ethan?" "They have him somewhere. The skinny kid with glasses? He's the reason I'm here. He recorded everything on his phone before they caught him. Sent it to your friend Emily before they took it." A shout from the hallway interrupted them. Check the back rooms, the fighter's missing. Time's up, Harris said. Follow me. They slipped out a service door into a maze of back corridors. Ahead, Jayden could see an exit sign glowing red in the darkness. Behind them, footsteps and angry voices grew closer. Go, Harris urged. I'll hold them off. I can't leave you. This isn't up for debate, son. I owe your father this much. Harris pushed him toward the exit. Find Emily. She has the evidence. And watch your back. Kane won't. Stop coming. The last thing Jayden saw before the door closed was Harris turning to face the approaching guards, fists raised. Outside, the cool night air hit Jayden's face. His mother's car was gone from where they'd parked it. Had Kane's men taken her too? Panic rose in his throat as he pulled out his phone to call her. Before he could dial, the warehouse door burst open behind him. 2 security guards emerged, scanning the darkness. Jayden pressed himself against the wall, barely breathing. He couldn't have gone far, one said. Kane wants him alive. What? About the coach? Not our problem anymore. Kane's handling him personally. They moved away, continuing their search in the opposite direction. Jayden slipped along the wall toward the main road, keeping to the shadows. His phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. Meet at Jefferson Bridge. Urgent. Emily had found him a way out. As he hurried through the darkness, one thought burned in his mind. This was far from over. Kane and Walker had taken everything from him. His reputation, his mother's job, his safety. Now they had Coach Harris and possibly Ethan. The final fight was yet to come. And this time, Jayden would be ready. By Monday morning, Ridgewood High was buzzing with a new development. Someone had anonymously posted footage of the underground fight online, and it had spread through the student body like wildfire. The video showed Jayden defeating a professional fighter twice his size, using techniques that left viewers stunned. Emily found Jayden waiting at their designated meeting spot, a coffee shop 3 miles from school. You're all over social media, she said, sliding into the booth across from him. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't slept. Everyone's talking about it. Any word from Ethan? Jayden asked. Emily shook her head. Nothing since Friday night. His parents filed a missing persons report. This is my fault. He was there because of me. No, Emily said firmly. This is much bigger than you. Look at this. She opened her laptop, showing Jayden a series of documents. My brother didn't just happen to see an underground fight. Ryan brought him there deliberately, as a test. Walker and Kane have been recruiting high school athletes for years. The ones who show promise get invited to special training. The ones who don't end up like your brother, Jayden finished. Emily nodded grimly. Kane's operation isn't just fights. It's a pipeline. Walker provides financial backing and political protection. Kane finds and trains the fighters. They've been doing this for years, all over the state. Including Ryan, especially Ryan. He hasn't been fighting in high school matches. He's been training with Kane's professionals since he was 14. His father has been grooming him to be the public face of their new venture, a legitimate fighting promotion, built on the backs of exploited teenagers. Jayden absorbed this information, the pieces falling into place. That's why they targeted me. I'm a threat to their narrative. Exactly. Ryan was supposed to be their unbeatable prodigy. Then you showed up with no formal training and made him look ordinary. Emily's expression darkened. There's something else. Kane announced a special event for next weekend, invitation only. The main event is you versus Ryan. But I never agreed to that. It doesn't matter. He's advertising it as the fight of the century. Winner gets everything. A professional contract, training, sponsorships. She hesitated. The promotional materials don't mention what happens to the loser. Jayden's phone buzzed, a text from his mother. They took the house. Don't come home. Meet me at Aunt Louise's. They're closing in, he said, showing Emily the message. We need to move fast. There's one more thing you should know, Emily said, lowering her voice. Coach Harris contacted me last night. He's hiding out at a motel on the edge of town. He says he has something that could bring Kane down, but he needs your help. Coach Harris's motel room was sparse and dimly lit. The coach himself looked worse than when Jayden had last seen him at the warehouse. Fresh bruises darkened his face, and his right arm was in a makeshift sling. "They worked me over pretty good," Harris explained, noting Jayden's concerned expression. "But I've had worse." "What happened to you after I left?" "Kane's men caught me. Would have been the end if your friend hadn't created a distraction." Harris gestured to the corner where Ethan sat with his laptop, typing furiously. "Ethan?" Jayden exclaimed. "You're okay." "Mostly," Ethan replied, showing a bandaged hand. "They broke 2 fingers before I got away." "How did you escape?" "Coach Harris happened," Ethan said with admiration. "He came out of nowhere, took down 3 guys. We ran for it during the chaos." Harris waved off the praise. "The important thing is we got this." He pointed to Ethan's screen. "Tell him." "I've been compiling everything," Ethan explained. "The fight footage, financial records Emily found, testimonies from other fighters Kane exploited. It's enough to launch an investigation, but not enough to guarantee Kane and Walker go down. We need concrete proof linking them directly to the illegal fights," Harris added. "And we need you to get it." "How?" "By accepting the fight with Ryan," Harris said grimly. Jayden stared at him. "You want me to go back in there, after everything that's happened?" "It's the only way," Harris insisted. "Kane's guard will be down. He thinks he's won. That you'll do anything to protect your mother and clear your father's name." He leaned forward. "I trained your father, Jayden. Not just at school, I was his real coach before Kane got his hooks into him. You never told me that. Couldn't risk it. But Carter was the best I'd ever seen. Until you." Harris's eyes were intense. "You have his gift, but you also have something he didn't. People willing to help you." Harris outlined the plan. Emily would continue gathering evidence and coordinating with a journalist contact. Ethan would handle the technical aspects, ensuring everything was recorded and securely backed up. Jayden would agree to the fight, getting close enough to obtain the final piece of evidence they needed, a recorded confession from Kane himself. "It's dangerous," Harris warned. "Ryan isn't like the fighters you've faced before. He's been training specifically to counter your style." "What do you mean?" "Kane has had people studying your movements since your first day at school. Why do you think Ryan and his crew kept testing you? They were gathering data." The revelation sent a chill through Jayden. Every confrontation, every hallway encounter, they had been analyzing him all along. "Then I need to show them something they haven't seen," Jayden said. For the next 5 days, Jayden trained with Harris in the abandoned warehouse where they'd set up a temporary base. The training was unlike anything he'd experienced before, focusing, not on defense as he'd always practiced, but on aggressive counter techniques his father had developed. Carter created these moves specifically to defeat Kane's fighters, Harris explained as they worked. Techniques that use an opponent's aggression against them. He never got to use them in his last fight. Jayden absorbed everything, pushing past his limits. Each night, he collapsed exhausted onto a thin mattress in the corner of the warehouse. Each morning, he rose before dawn to begin again. On the 4th day, Emily arrived with news. Ryan's training has intensified. His father's brought in specialists, former MMA champions, Olympic wrestlers. They're determined to make this his crowning moment. "Good," Jayden said, wrapping his hands. "Let them get overconfident." On the final night before the fight, Monica visited the warehouse. She'd been staying with her sister in a neighboring town, kept informed but distanced for her safety. "I should have told you everything years ago," she said as they sat alone. "About your father's real work, about Kane, about why we kept moving." "You were protecting me," Jayden said. "I understand that now. Your father wanted to give you a choice he never had, to live free from that world." She squeezed his hand. "But I see now that running only delayed the inevitable. You're too much like him, too gifted to stay hidden forever. After tomorrow, it'll be over, one way or another." Monica's eyes were worried. "Promise me you'll be careful. These men, they don't play by any rules." "That's why we're going to win," Jayden replied, "because neither do we anymore." The venue for the final fight was larger, more polished than the warehouse. a converted theater with stadium seating circling a professional octagon cage. Security was tight, with armed guards checking every attendee against a guest list. The crowd was a mix of underground fight enthusiasts and legitimate sports figures, drawn by the whispered promise of witnessing something extraordinary. In the locker room, Kane personally supervised Jaden's preparation. "A lot of important people are here tonight," he said, watching as Jaden's hands were wrapped. "People who can make or break careers." "I'm not interested in a career," Jaden replied. "Just fulfilling our deal." Kane laughed. "Still holding on to that illusion? There is no deal, boy. There's only what I decide happens next." He leaned closer. "Your father thought he could leave too. Look how that turned out." Jaden kept his expression neutral, though his heart hammered. The wire taped to his chest felt suddenly obvious, though it was carefully concealed beneath layers of athletic tape. Across the venue, in another locker room, Ryan Walker was receiving final instructions from his father and a team of trainers. Through Emily's surveillance, they'd learned Ryan had been on an intense training and supplement regimen, some of it likely illegal, to prepare for this fight. When Jaden entered the arena, the crowd's reaction was mixed. Some cheers, some boos. He scanned the audience, noting the positions of his allies. Emily was near a fire exit, disguised with glasses and a wig. Ethan had gained access as part of the technical crew, responsible for the venue's video feed. Coach Harris remained hidden, monitoring everything from a van parked outside, ready to move if things went wrong. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for. Tonight's main event. Two undefeated prodigies collide." Ryan entered from the opposite side, his entrance accompanied by dramatic music and lighting effects. He looked different, harder, more defined, his eyes cold and focused. This wasn't the high school bully Jaden had known. This was a fighter molded by professionals, designed to destroy. As they met in the center of the octagon for the referees' instructions, Ryan spoke through his mouthguard. "You should have stayed down when you had the chance." "Funny," Jaden replied. "I was about to say the same to you." Thomas Walker sat prominently at ringside beside Victor Kane, both men radiating confident anticipation. The plan required Jaden to last long enough for Ethan to hack into the venue's private communication system. Every moment in the cage was bought time. The bell rang, and Ryan attacked immediately with a flurry of precise strikes, jabs, hooks, leg kicks, all thrown with technical perfection. Jaden defended, but found his usual evasive movements countered as if Ryan could predict them. Harris had been right. They had studied him thoroughly. The first round was brutal. Ryan's shots began finding their mark, opening cuts above Jaden's eye and along his cheekbone. The crowd sensed blood, their roars growing louder with each landed blow. Between rounds, Jaden sat in his corner breathing heavily as a cut man worked on his face. "Ethan needs more time," came Emily's voice through the tiny earpiece they'd risked smuggling in. "Keep it going." The second round began worse than the first. Ryan had found his rhythm and pressed his advantage, backing Jaden against the cage with relentless pressure. A hard right hook sent Jaden to the canvas. The crowd rose to their feet, sensing the end was near. As the referee began his count, Jaden caught sight of Kane and Walker at ringside, already celebrating. Kane was speaking into Walker's ear, both men smiling with satisfaction. Something shifted in Jaden then, a cold clarity replacing the fog of combat. He rose at the count of 8, blood streaming down his face, but his eyes clear and focused. "Still got some fight left?" Ryan taunted. Jaden didn't respond. Instead, he changed his stance completely, shifting his weight, adjusting his guard to a position he'd never shown before, the stance his father had developed, the techniques Kane had never seen. The transformation was immediate and dramatic. When Ryan attacked again, Jaden countered with movements that seemed to defy physics, redirecting force, creating angles that shouldn't exist, turning Ryan's power against him. A counter right hand rocked Ryan back on his heels. A sweeping low kick took his legs out. For the first time, uncertainty flashed across Ryan's face. "We're in," came Ethan's voice through the earpiece. "Microphones are live. Get Kane talking." Jaden pressed forward, forcing Ryan to the defensive. With each exchange, He pushed closer to the side of the cage where Kane and Walker sat. During a clinch against the fence, he locked eyes with Kane. "My father knew, didn't he?" Jaden called out, loud enough for Kane to hear. "About the fixed fights, about you and Walker planning to eliminate him." Kane's expression darkened. "Focus on the fight, boy," he shouted back. He threatened to expose you, Jaden continued, absorbing a hard elbow from Ryan to maintain the position. "That's why you had him killed." Ryan broke free, landing a hard combination that sent Jaden stumbling back. But he'd said enough. Kane was on his feet now, agitated, leaning over to Walker with heated words picked up by the venue's microphones and Ethan's recording devices. The third round became a war of attrition. Both fighters bloodied, both exhausted, but Jaden's new techniques were taking their toll on Ryan. The years of specialized training were meeting their counter, and Ryan's confidence was crumbling. "It's done," came Emily's voice. "We got everything. Kane confessed to Walker about your father. It's all recorded. Get out of there." But Jaden wasn't finished. As Ryan lunged forward with a desperate attack, Jaden executed the move his father never had the chance to use, a perfectly timed counter that caught Ryan flush, sending him crashing unconscious to the mat. The arena fell silent, then erupted. No one had expected this outcome, least of all Kane and Walker, who stared in stunned disbelief. As the referee raised Jaden's hand in victory, the doors at every entrance burst open. Police officers flooded in, followed by FBI agents in tactical gear. "Victor Kane, Thomas Walker," called the lead agent through a megaphone. "You're under arrest for racketeering, illegal gambling operations, and conspiracy to commit murder." Chaos erupted. Spectators scrambled for exits. Security guards drew weapons only to find themselves vastly outnumbered by law enforcement. Kane made a desperate break for a side door but was tackled by officers. Thomas Walker, ever the pragmatist, didn't resist. His cold eyes found Jaden's across the crowd. "This isn't over," he mouthed silently, before being led away in handcuffs. In the midst of the pandemonium, Jaden climbed out of the cage. Emily rushed to his side, supporting his weight as exhaustion and injuries took their toll. "You did it," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "It's over." Coach Harris appeared through the crowd, his face breaking into a rare smile. "Your father would be proud, son." But as they made their way toward the exit, Jaden caught a glimpse of Ryan being loaded onto a stretcher, still unconscious. Thomas Walker might be in custody, but his son remained, a reminder that some cycles were harder to break than others. "Is it really over?" Jaden asked quietly. Harris followed his gaze. "One battle at a time," he replied. "One battle at a time." Jaden winced as the doctor applied butterfly stitches to the cut above his right eye. The hospital's fluorescent lights seemed unnaturally bright after the darkness of the fighting arena. In the corridor outside his examination room, he could hear the steady murmur of voices, police officers, federal agents, and his mother arguing with someone about staying by his side. "You're lucky," the doctor said, stepping back to examine her handiwork. "No fractures, no serious concussion, just a lot of superficial damage." Jaden nodded slightly, careful not to disturb the fresh stitches. His body felt like one massive bruise, but he was alive, which was more than Kane had intended. A gentle knock preceded Emily's entrance. She looked exhausted but triumphant, clutching a tablet to her chest like a shield. "How are you feeling?" she asked, pulling a chair beside his examination bed. "Like I went 10 rounds with a bulldozer," Jaden replied with a weak smile. "How's Ethan?" Getting his hand properly set. "The doctors say he'll have full function back in a few weeks." She glanced toward the door before lowering her voice. "It worked, Jaden. The FBI had already been building a case against Kane for months. Our evidence was the final piece they needed." She turned the tablet toward him. On the screen was a news website with the headline, "Underground Fighting Ring Busted. Prominent Businessman Among Those Arrested." "They're not releasing all the names yet," Emily explained, "but Walker's definitely in custody. His lawyer's already trying to negotiate a deal for reduced charges in exchange for information on Kane's other operations." "Typical," Jaden muttered. "Even now he's looking for a way out." "It won't work this time." Emily's voice was firm. The recording we got is damning. Kane explicitly mentioned Walker's involvement in your father's death. No judge will let him walk after that. Monica entered the room, her face a mixture of worry and relief. The police want your statement when you're ready, she told Jayden. Not tonight, tomorrow, or the next day. What happens now? Jayden asked. Our house is evidence in a federal investigation, Monica finished with a small smile. But my sister says we can stay with her as long as we need to, and my old job has already called. They want me back. Apparently, with Walker's influence gone, they've had a sudden change of heart. A sharp knock interrupted them as Coach Harris entered, looking considerably more battered than when Jayden had last seen him. Fresh bruises darkened his face, and his arm remained in a sling. Thought you might want to see this, he said, holding up his phone. On the screen was a live news broadcast showing Victor Kane being led into a police station in handcuffs, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled, his expression murderous. They're running the full story tomorrow, Harris continued. Kane's empire is crumbling by the hour. Financial records, fight locations, payoffs to officials, it's all coming out. What about Ryan? Jayden asked. A shadow crossed Harris's face. Released from the hospital an hour ago. His father pulled some final strings before they took him away. The kid's been sent to some fancy boarding school in Switzerland, effective immediately. So he just gets away with everything? Emily's voice was indignant. Not exactly, Harris replied. The school is more of a forced exile, part of Walker's desperate attempt to distance his son from the scandal. Ryan's fighting career is over before it really began. Jayden absorbed this information with mixed feelings. Ryan had been more than a bully. He'd been complicit in something truly sinister. Yet there was something hollow about this resolution, a punishment that felt more like an escape. There's something else. You should know, Harris said, his tone growing serious. Kane's financial records were seized. They contained details about payments made to keep certain investigations quiet. He glanced at Monica. Including the investigation into your husband's death. Monica paled. What did they find? Enough. To prove it wasn't an accident. The driver who hit Carter was on Kane's payroll. He's already in custody, talking to save his own skin. Harris placed a gentle hand on Monica's shoulder. They're reopening the case, Monica. Carter will finally get justice. Tears welled in Monica's eyes as she reached for Jayden's hand. For years they had lived under the shadow of that accident, moving from town to town, looking over their shoulders. Now at last, the truth would be known. The following week unfolded in a blur of police interviews, media inquiries, all declined, and medical follow-ups. Ridgewood High remained in a state of shock as the full extent of Walker's and Kane's operation came to light. The school board, desperate to distance itself from the scandal, unanimously voted to lift Jayden's suspension and expunge any disciplinary actions from his record. They're terrified of a lawsuit, Emily explained as they sat in her backyard, enjoying the first peaceful afternoon they'd had in weeks. Half the board members are scrambling to prove they knew nothing about Walker's activities. And the other half? Jayden asked. Resigning before they're investigated too. She scrolled through her phone. The local paper's doing a series on corruption and town leadership. Your name's been kept out of it, but everyone knows who brought it all down. Jayden leaned back in his chair, watching clouds drift overhead. I never wanted to be at the center of all this. Yet here you are, Emily said with a soft smile. History has a way of finding the right people at the right time. His phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Turn on Channel 6 now. Grabbing Emily's tablet, they quickly pulled up the local news broadcast. Thomas Walker's face filled the screen, his usual confident demeanor replaced by a haggard, desperate expression. The caption read, Breaking, business leader flees while on bail. Sources confirmed that Walker was last seen boarding a private plane at a small airstrip outside the county, the reporter was saying. Federal authorities have issued an arrest warrant and are coordinating with international law enforcement, but as of now, Walker's whereabouts remain unknown. He ran, Emily whispered, disbelief in her voice. Jayden wasn't surprised. Men like Walker didn't face consequences. They evaded them. He'd probably had escape plans in place for years, along with offshore accounts and fake identities. What, about Victor Kane? Jaden asked as the news segment shifted to other stories. They soon had their answer. The following morning's headlines announced, "Fight promoter found dead in cell." According to the reports, Kane had been discovered unresponsive during a routine check. The cause was listed as apparent suicide, though details were suspiciously sparse. Coach Harris shook his head grimly when Jaden showed him the article. Suicide? Not a chance. Kane had too much pride, too much arrogance. Then what happened? Kane knew too much about too many powerful people, Harris replied. Someone made sure he couldn't make any deals with prosecutors. The implications were chilling. If Kane had been silenced, it meant his organization extended, far beyond what they'd uncovered, reaching into places where even federal investigations couldn't easily follow. 3 weeks after the fight, Jaden received an unexpected visitor at his aunt's house. A man in an expensive suit introduced himself as Marcus Reynolds, a talent scout for Elite Fighting Championship, one of the largest legitimate MMA organizations in the country. "I'll be direct," Reynolds said, after Monica had reluctantly shown him into the living room. "We've seen what you can do. Your fight against Dominic Reed was extraordinary, and your victory over Ryan Walker was nothing short of phenomenal." Jaden said nothing, just watched the man warily. "We're prepared to offer you a development contract," Reynolds continued, sliding a folder across the coffee table. "Professional training, proper coaching, legitimate fights on television, the kind of career your father should have had." Jaden glanced at the folder but didn't open it. "How do you know about my father?" Reynolds hesitated. "Let's just say I've been in this business a long time. Carter Taylor was a legend in certain circles." "And who are you connected to?" Jaden asked pointedly. "Kane, Walker, or someone higher up the food chain?" The scout's practiced smile faltered slightly. "Our organization is completely legitimate. We have no connection to those unfortunate situations. Then why approach me now? Why not before all this happened?" Reynolds cleared his throat. "Talent like yours doesn't stay hidden forever. We're simply the first to recognize your potential." Monica, who had been silently observing, spoke up. "And who exactly is funding this generous offer?" "Several investors who prefer to remain anonymous." "At this stage," Reynolds replied smoothly. "Standard practice in our industry." The practiced evasion told Jaden everything he needed to know. He pushed the unopened folder back across the table. "Thank you, but I'm not interested." Reynolds looked genuinely surprised. "You haven't even looked at the numbers. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." "It's the same opportunity that got my father killed," Jaden said evenly. "Different packaging, same product." After Reynolds left, Monica studied her son with a mixture of pride and concern. "Are you sure about that decision? It could have been legitimate." "Nothing in that world is truly legitimate, Mom," Jaden replied. "Not when it starts with anonymous backers and secret deals." Later that day, he visited Coach Harris at his apartment. The coach had officially resigned from Ridgewood High, citing health reasons. In reality, he was avoiding the spotlight as investigations continued. "You turned down Elite Fighting Championship," Harris said, when Jaden told him about Reynolds' visit. "It wasn't a question. How did you know?" "Because I got the same offer after my last professional fight 20 years ago." Harris poured them both glasses of water. "Reynolds isn't a bad guy. He just works for people who are." "One of Kane's former associates?" Harris nodded. "The fighting world is smaller than you think. Different names, same faces pulling the strings." He studied Jaden carefully. "So what now? What's your next move?" It was a question Jaden had been asking himself since the night of the fight. The path that had seemed so clear in the heat of battle was now clouded with uncertainties. "I don't know," he admitted. "Everything feels unfinished." Ethan's documentary about Kane's fighting ring began circulating online, carefully edited, to protect Jaden's identity while exposing the breadth of the operation. What had started as amateur footage became a full-fledged investigative piece, picked up by national news outlets and streaming platforms. The impact was immediate and far-reaching. Similar fighting rings in other states came under scrutiny. Athletes who had disappeared from legitimate sports were found competing in underground venues. Parents came forward with stories of their children being recruited and exploited. For Jaden, each new revelation brought a mixture of satisfaction and unease. They had exposed something truly sinister, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that they'd only scratched the surface. His suspicions were confirmed when Emily arrived at his aunt's house one evening, her expression grave. "You need to see this," she said, handing him a sealed envelope. "My father found it in his law firm's archives. A case file that was supposed to be destroyed years ago. Inside was a series of documents detailing a lawsuit that had been quietly settled out of court. The plaintiff was listed as C.T., Carter Taylor, Jaden's father. The defendant was a shell company that, according to Emily's research, traced back to Thomas Walker. Your father was going to expose them," Emily explained. "Not just Kane, but the entire network. He had evidence of fight fixing, money laundering, political bribes, everything. The settlement wasn't about money. It was a threat to keep him quiet." "But he didn't stay quiet," Jaden said softly. "No. According to these notes, he was planning to go public anyway. That's when the accident happened." Jaden studied the documents, his father's signature at the bottom of one page, a tangible connection to a man he barely remembered. "Walker's still out there," he said finally, "and whoever helped him escape is still operating." "What are you going to do about it?" Emily asked. "Finish what my father started." 6 months after the night that changed everything, Jaden stood at a podium in front of the newly established Youth Outreach Center. Beside him, Coach Harris beamed with pride as they prepared to cut the ribbon on what had once been Kelly's underground gym. "From this day forward," Jaden announced to the gathered crowd, "this space will serve as a sanctuary for young people seeking purpose, discipline, and community through martial arts and mentorship." The journey to this moment had been complex. Using funds from the civil settlement against Kane's seized assets, Jaden and Harris had purchased the abandoned building, transforming it from a den of exploitation into a beacon of hope. Behind the podium, Ethan worked a professional camera, documenting the center's opening for his ongoing project, which had evolved from an exposé into a powerful narrative about redemption and justice. His documentary had already won awards at several film festivals and sparked investigations in 3 states. Emily stood in the front row, her proud smile mirroring her brother Jacob's. After years of hiding from his trauma, Jacob had found purpose, working with other young people who had been targeted by predators like Kane and Walker. Monica watched from the side, her eyes glistening. The past months had been a time of healing for her as well. With Carter's death officially ruled a homicide and the conspiracy behind it exposed, she had finally been able to mourn properly, to release the fear that had driven her for so long. Jaden finished his speech and cut the ribbon. He reflected on how much had changed since that first day at Ridgewood High. He had entered as an outsider, determined to keep his head down and his skills hidden. Now he stood as someone who had not only embraced his abilities, but had found a way to use them for something greater than himself. The ceremony complete, Jaden mingled with community members and reporters, answering questions about the center's programs and mission. In a quiet moment, Emily appeared at his side. "Quite a change from fighting in an underground cage," she said with a smile. "For the better," Jaden agreed. "This is how it should be, training that builds up instead of exploits." "Have you heard anything about Ryan?" Emily asked, her expression more serious. Jaden nodded. "Harris got word last week. He's still at that Swiss school, apparently keeping a low profile. The scandal followed him even there, and Walker, still in the wind. Interpol has tracked him to 3 different countries, but he's always one step ahead." Emily studied him carefully. "You still think he'll come back, don't you?" "Men like Walker don't just disappear. They regroup, rebrand, and return when they think it's safe." Jaden glanced around at the bustling activity of the new center. "But we'll be ready when he does." After the opening ceremony, Jaden met privately with Harris in what had once been Mike Kelly's office. They had transformed it into a memorial of sorts. Photos of fighters who had been exploited by Kane's operation, including a prominent image of Carter Taylor in his prime. "Your father would be proud," Harris said, his gruff voice softened with emotion. Not just of what you did in that cage, but of this. He gestured to the center beyond the office walls, breaking the cycle instead of perpetuating it. I still feel like there's more to do, Jaden admitted. Walker's still out there, and whoever helped Kane's operation run so long, politicians, judges, business leaders, most of them got away untouched. Harris nodded solemnly. One battle at a time, son. You've struck a bigger blow than you know. The next generation of fighters will have a choice your father never did. He placed a hand on Jaden's shoulder. That matters. In the weeks that followed, life settled into a new pattern. Jaden returned to Ridgewood High, where the atmosphere had changed dramatically. The school board had been completely replaced, and a new principal had instituted strict anti-bullying policies. Many of Ryan's former crew had faded into the background. Their social capital evaporated without their leader. Emily and Jaden's friendship deepened as they navigated the final months of the school year. Their shared experience had created a bond that transcended ordinary high school dynamics. They spent evenings working at the outreach center or helping Ethan with his ongoing documentary project. "I've been accepted to Columbia," Emily told him one afternoon as they walked home. "Criminal justice program." "That's amazing," Jaden said sincerely. "You'll make an incredible lawyer." "What about you? Any decisions yet?" Jaden had received several college acceptance letters, including one with a full scholarship to study criminal justice at Georgetown. "I'm leaning toward Georgetown," he admitted. "Their program has connections to the FBI." "Following the case wherever it leads?" Emily asked perceptively. "Something like that," Jaden agreed. "This isn't over. Not while Walker's free and his connections are still in power." Emily linked her arm through his. "Whatever you decide, I've got your back. Some fights are worth having." The words stayed with Jaden as he continued his daily routine. School, training at the center, quiet evenings with his mother in their new apartment. They had decided not to return to their old house, even after it was released as evidence. Too many painful memories lingered there. Instead, they had found a modest place closer to the center, where Jaden could walk to work and Monica could begin rebuilding her career with a local accounting firm that had hired her after the scandal broke. One evening, as Jaden was closing up the center after a late training session, he found an envelope that had been slipped under the door. No postmark, no return address. Inside was a newspaper clipping from an international publication showing Thomas Walker at a resort in an unspecified tropical location. Someone had circled his image in red ink. Below it, a handwritten note. "Some debts remain unpaid." Jaden studied the photo carefully. Walker looked relaxed, confident, a man who believed he had escaped justice. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the message was clear. Someone else was tracking Walker, someone who wanted Jaden to know it. He debated whether to show the clipping to Harris or Emily, ultimately deciding to keep it to himself for now. They had all sacrificed enough already. The end of the school year arrived with a normalcy that felt almost surreal after everything that had happened. Jaden, Emily, and Ethan sat together at graduation, sharing private smiles as the principal made vague references to overcoming challenges in her speech. Afterward, as families gathered on the school lawn for photos and celebrations, Monica hugged Jaden tightly. "Your father would be so proud," she whispered. "I know," Jaden replied, and for the first time, he truly believed it. Later that evening, Jaden decided to walk home alone, taking the long route through downtown. The early summer air was warm, the streets peaceful. As he passed the local Say diner, he noticed a black car parked across the street, its engine running despite being unoccupied. A prickling sensation at the back of his neck made him slow his pace. Something felt off. The car door opened, and a man stepped out, middle-aged, expensively dressed, with an air of quiet authority. There was something vaguely familiar about him, though Jaden was certain they had never met. The man approached, stopping a respectful distance away. "Jaden Taylor?" Jaden tensed, his body automatically shifting into a defensive stance. "Who's asking?" The man smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. Just an interested party. You've made quite an impression in certain circles. If Kane sent you, Kane is dead, the man interrupted, and Walker is indisposed. This is about what comes next. I'm not interested in fighting, Jaden said firmly. That chapter's closed. The man laughed softly. You really think this is over? That exposing one operation ends the game? He shook his head. You've barely scratched the surface, son. There are forces at work that make Kane look like a small-time hustler. Why are you telling me this? Consider it a professional courtesy, a warning from someone who recognizes your father in you. The man's expression turned serious. You've made powerful enemies, more powerful than you realize. They're watching, waiting. Jaden studied the man carefully. And which side are you on? That depends entirely on your next move. The man reached into his pocket and produced a business card, blank, except for a phone number. When you're ready to learn the truth about your father's work, his, real work, call this number. Jaden took the card reluctantly. What do you mean, his real work? But the man was already turning away. You'll understand when you're ready. Until then, watch your back. This game is far from over. As the man returned to his car, Jaden felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. He watched the black sedan pull away, memorizing the license plate automatically. For a moment, he stood frozen on the sidewalk, the business card heavy in his hand. Then, with deliberate calm, he continued walking home, his mind racing with possibilities. Whatever this new threat was, he would face it as he had faced Kane and Walker, with preparation, allies, and the training his father had passed down. The black car reappeared at the end of the block, moving slowly alongside him. The window rolled down just enough for the driver to make eye contact, a final warning, a reminder that he was still being watched. Jaden stared back unflinchingly, refusing to be intimidated. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the gathering darkness. Whatever came next, he would be ready. Behind him, the black car continued its slow, silent pursuit, a shadow that neither retreated nor advanced, simply waited for the next chapter to begin. Some battles end with clear victors, but the most important wars are fought in moments of choice. What would you have done in Jaden's position? Would you have embraced your gifts for glory, or tempered them for something greater? If this story of resilience, skill, and the courage to break destructive cycles resonated with you, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more powerful narratives that explore the complex choices we face when extraordinary abilities meet ordinary injustice. Comment below with your thoughts on Jaden's journey and what you think awaits him as he confronts the larger conspiracy behind his father's death. Your support helps bring more stories like this to life. Until next time, remember, the most dangerous fighter isn't the one who strikes first. It's the one who knows exactly when to strike.